Assalamualaikum. Uh, Welcome to the online lecture on this topic today is engineers in organization. And also we are going into this just a brief uh, review of ethics again, because ethics is a very important topic for this subject. And I'm not going to give a long lecture. That's about maybe 1 hour or less. Then after that, you should go and do your own research. It's actually that 10 minutes of lecture, of online lecture, is equivalent to 1 hour of face-to-face lecture actually. But what I'm doing now is that I take it as 1 minute, So 1 hour of lecture is equivalent to 1 hour of face-to-face. Right? So because if I do as what it's supposed to be, which is just give a lecture of 10 minutes, then after that, I leave it to you to go and do your own research. You will not be able to do it. You will be lost, because in an online lecture for 10 minutes, basically I just mentioned, okay, these are the reference and whatnot. So in order to get the further information, you have to go and search for that reference yourself and read. And that reference may be 10, 20 pages in order for you to understand. Right? But I know that you have limitations. You cannot go to the library and whatnot. So what I'm doing is that I treat this as like a face-to-face kind of lecture. Okay. Everybody has downloaded the slides 6, 7A and 7B. So there are 3 sets of slides. Okay. So now I'm going to share. Before I share that, let me do this. Oh, no, not this one. Okay, this is the one. Okay. Engineers in organization. Okay. Okay, engineers in organization. Okay, now I'm going to share the slides. Okay, everybody can see these slides, engineers in organization? If you can.
Saya nampak, sir.
Nampak,
saya nampak.
Nampak, okay. And then I can continue. Okay. This actually slides like 6 on the engineers in organization. Today we are going to talk about the role of engineers in terms of the decision making in an organization. Right? So there is a natural conflict between management and professionals because of their differences in educational background, socialization, values, vocational interests, work habits, and outlook. Okay? So, what it says is that the management, people who manage and people who are doing the skill work as professionals, such as engineers, doctors, accountants, lawyers, there is a natural conflict between these two. Why? Because of their differences in educational background. For example, if you walk around on campus, you as an engineer, you as an engineering student, and you compare yourself with somebody in management faculty, faculty pengurusan. They study different thing and you study different thing. right? And you feel that, oh, these people who are not in faculty of engineering, they have it easy, right? They only study 3 years, whereas you have to study 4 years to get the degree, right? In terms of socialization, maybe in UPNM it's not that uh, apparent in terms of the differences, the way that they socialize, because after after 5 o'clock, you go to the same program, ALK program and whatnot. But if you are in a normal university, the socialization uh, pattern also different between the engineering students and the business school students. The way they dress also different. The engineers, if you are in a different university, not in UPNM, the engineering student will wear jeans and t-shirts, go to class. When I was in US, we wear jeans and t-shirts, go to class. Whereas the business school students, they smartly dress, wear pants, wear shirts, or if they wear t-shirt also, they wear the collared t-shirts. Whereas the engineering students, orang kata sempoi. So, and the circle of friends also different. The values, the management values is basically that to get things done, and to what do you call it, to finish the work and to release the product, for example, to the market, so that they want to make money. So the management students, basically they talk about the return on investment, how much money that they put in and how much money that they get it back. If there is more money that they pump in and there is no money coming in, therefore they kill that project. Whereas for engineering students, we rarely talk about money. We talk about the products. How good is the design? How good, how efficient is the systems? We talk about in that sense. Vocational interest also different. The professionals and the engineers, they are more technically inclined. Whereas for the management people, they are broadly, their interest maybe is a bit broader. They look at things in general instead of in specifics. The work habits, the engineers like to spend time in the lab, working with machines, and prefer to work with machines instead of interact with people. Whereas the management, they like to talk to people. They like to go and have tea with friends. They like to have meetings and discussions in coffee shops, in coffee houses. Whereas the engineers, they just do their work in the lab. They work with machine, interface with machines. So those are the differences, the natural conflicts that arises based on these differences. So how are we going to handle that? So the engineers must learn about these differences, must be aware of this, and when you want to present certain things to management, you have to make sure that you appeal to them. You appeal to them so that they be able to approve your proposals. Okay, the executive authority, the corporate or institutional right given to a person to exercise power based on the resources of an organization. This is the meaning of the executive authority. What kind of authority that they have, and this authority is basically that is a right given to a person, and they exercise this power, this right, based on the resources of the organization. For example, human resource manager. So they have the power, the rights over the human resources in that organization. They have the right to transfer you anywhere they want to transfer you. Especially in the military, they can assign you to anywhere, right? And can you refuse that assignment? Can you refuse? Normally, you cannot refuse, right? Unless you have a clear justification of maybe medical and whatnot. If you have a medical justification, maybe you have to leave the service. You are not fit to serve. If you absence from work, you run away from that assignment, you are considered as AWOL, right? Absence without leave. And you can be taken into disciplinary action, a court martial, right? So that is the executive authority that they have over you. And this executive authority is distinguishable from the power in getting the job done. For example, they are getting the executive authority. Basically, they get the job done is through the executive power, through the power that is given based on their position by the law, for example, or by the bosses, by the undang-undang. But you, as a professional, you also have an authority, which is called an expert authority. Expert authority is basically that the possession of special knowledge, skill, or competence to perform tasks or to give sound advice. So the difference between executive authority and expert authority is that executive authority is given by the law or by the authority or by somebody higher up. Whereas the expert authority is actually based on your knowledge, your skill, and your competence to perform tasks or to give sound advice. So if you are an IR, professional engineer, you have the expert authority in that field that you are given the IR in. For example, you are an IR in power, in electrical engineering. So therefore, you are an expert authority in power engineering or in electrical engineering. If you are an IR in mechanical, then you have the expert authority in mechanical. So there are two different. It's expert authority and as a executive authority, right? So engineers and managers. Engineers do often experience a conflict between loyalty to their employer and loyalty to their profession. They always have this conflict because the managers sometimes will ask an engineer to do certain things. For example, to cut costs. And you feel that if you cut the cost, then maybe you compromise on the safety of the product. So which one that you want to be loyal to? Do you want to follow the managers or you want to stick to your profession, where the profession says that is the safety of the user is important, is paramount, is critical. So how far that you can comply to the instruction of your manager. So this conflict will come into play. And in the case study later, maybe in 2-3 lectures in the future, you will see a lot of these conflicts that arises in the case study. Many managers are not engineers and do not have engineering expertise. So communication often difficult. You as an engineer and you trying to explain to the manager who are not from the engineering background. So it's difficult to explain and difficult to present to them, because you have to use terms which are non-technical so that they understand, or you have to explain the basics so that they'll be able to understand what you are trying to present to them, right? Many engineers who are not managers aspire to the management role in the future. Many engineers basically that they want to be manager. Why? Because being a manager, it comes with financial reward and prestige. People don't really respect engineers because engineers is like a blue collar job. But the society basically look at the CEOs, the general manager as the prestigious positions. If you tell them, oh, I'm a principal engineer, basically that the people say, what the heck is principal engineer? I've never heard of it. Whereas principal engineer can be is the same level as general manager, or even the salary sometimes is in certain organization is higher than general manager. I used to have, but this is a contract engineer. An engineer who is reporting to me has a higher salary than I was at the time. I was the general manager, and he reports to my staff, not report to me actually, not reporting direct to me. He reports to the project manager. So he's a principal engineer. Principal engineer is about my level as a general manager. But since he's not management, he is in the engineering on the technical part. So he reports to somebody lower than his rank. That project manager is only about what do you call it? If it's on the technical level, it's about a bit higher than senior engineer. So manager carries prestige compared to the engineer. And there are a lot of engineers trying to be managers. So some of them is basically that they go through MBA. They take MBA, Masters in Business Administration. After they do the Bachelor of Engineering, and they work, let's say, for 5 years or 3 years, then they do the MBA, so that they acquire certain knowledge in management. Three categories of corporation. These are the types of companies, corporation. There are engineer-oriented companies, which focus primarily on the quality of the products. So their focus is on the technical part. This is the engineer-oriented companies. Mostly these companies, if you look at the German companies, so that's why if you look at their cars, very good quality, high quality, used to be lah. So these are the engineer-oriented companies, and their what do you call it, customer service is very bad. My daughter, who is working in Germany, is always complaining about the customer service there. But in terms of the engineering part, they are very good. Another type of company is there's a customer-oriented companies. So their priority is to set the satisfaction of the customers. So they are very good in serving the customers. If you call them, they will answer you very promptly. They will make you comfortable. So these are customer-oriented companies. Customer-oriented companies is normally a company like in what do you call it, in Japanese company, in also in American company, they are customer-oriented, and they promise you everything, and they make you feel what do you call it, secure dealing with them. Another type of company is that it's a finance-oriented companies. So their focus is making money. So this is like banking in Malaysia. Whatever they want to charge the interest to profit. So their orientation is making money. So these are the three types of the corporation: engineer-oriented companies, customer-oriented companies, and finance-oriented companies. Any questions so far? No, So, how managers and engineers relates to each other? Managers and engineers typically have different attitudes and approach. Yes, managers are looking at money, looking at the time. They are looking, okay, how much it will cost me to do this thing. And it should be as low as possible. How much money that I can get from this project? As much money as I can. And how long it will take for this project to complete so that I can get my money. So for the managers is looking at as fast as you can. So those are the concerns of the managers. Whereas the engineers are talking about what is the gain of this product. What is the signal to noise ratio? What is the safety functions of the product? What is the features of this product? So they are looking at two different things. Managers tend to be more distant from the technical and detail of jobs. The managers doesn't want to know the technicality of it. They sit in their office and they just want reports from you. Whereas the engineers sit in the lab, hands-on, do the work. Okay. The managers focus more on the jobs in their entirety from wider perspective. They are looking at the overall of the projects. They are looking at the overall of the project, whereas the engineers are looking at the specific parts of the project. They are looking at the technical parts of the project. In terms of budget, let somebody else handle. Let the managers handle. So the focus are different. And the managers are focused on people than things. They're looking at the human resources mainly. Do we have enough people in this project? Are we hiring too many people for this project? Should we hire people as a permanent staff or as a contract, project per project basis? So those are the things that the managers think of. The engineers, what they think, hey, I need engineer the people to do work. That's all. How you get it, whether it's on contract, whether it's on the permanent basis, I don't care. That is the engineer's point of view. So you have these different views on certain things and how these managers and engineers to work with each other for the betterment of the company and for the people. So from the what I have presented, basically that these are the characteristics of engineers and managers, the differences. Managers considered as not professional, so basically that they are not trained in in a technical skills, in a scientific skills, whereas the engineers are professional that must uphold the standards that their profession has decided. Because one of the hallmark of a profession is that it has to have a code of ethics. So the engineers must uphold the standard and code of ethics of that engineering profession. Whereas managers, they don't have a specific code of ethics. No, they don't have. The managers govern by standard that prevails within the organization. So they just follow the standard operating procedure or the policy of the organization that they work for. And perhaps they are governed by their own moral beliefs or the religious belief that they hold. That's all. The engineers, they have dual loyalty to the organization and to their profession. The managers, they're only loyal to the company and to themselves. The engineers have two dual loyalty, organization and profession, and of course to himself. So those are the difference. The managers feel strong pressures to keep costs down. They are looking at cutting costs. They are looking at optimizing the cost. How much money that they spend, they should get return berapa kali ganda. How many times of what they spend. They are looking at that. But the engineers tend to assign consideration relevant to design so that minimal standard of safety and quality to be met before any other conditions are relevant. So the engineers are looking at the safety of the product that they design. They need to meet the minimum standard of that safety and quality of the product before the consideration of money, for example, to be taken into. Right? So therefore, the managers believe that the engineers sometimes go too far in pursuing safety. They think that the engineers are spending too much money, too much time on the safety side of the design. That is actually the differences between engineers and managers. So, with that kind of conflict, who should make the decision? Engineers or managers? Who should make the decision? What do you think?
Manager, sir.
Manager. Why manager?
Because they manage, sir.
Because they manage. But should you leave the safety of the of the public to them? because they if you leave to them, then basically that they will cut costs, and by cutting costs, it will jeopardize the safety. It will compromise the safety of the product, which in turn will endanger the user of the product. So you as an engineer, do you feel comfortable working in that company where all the decisions are being made by the managers alone?
Both of them, sir.
No?
Both of them.
Huh?
Both of them.
Yes. It has to be both of them. It has to be both have the inputs in making the decision, but the final say is normally is the manager. The final say of that decision normally is the manager. But the engineers shouldn't be left out from that decision-making process. The engineers must participate in the decision-making process. So we have this PED versus PMD. PED stands for proper engineering decision versus proper management decision. So you have to balance between these two. The balance between the proper engineering decision with the decision made by managers, and to balance between the decision made by engineers with the proper management decision. So you have to balance between these two. Right? What is proper engineering decision? Proper engineering decision, which is the decision made by the engineers, involve technical matters that require engineering expertise. Whatever decision that requires technical engineering expertise, this decision should be made by the engineers. And this falls within the ethical standards embodied in the engineering codes, especially those requires engineers to protect the health and safety of the public. So this falls under proper engineering decision. Proper engineering decision must be made by the engineers. And they are involved two things, in technical matter and ethical standards. So if the decisions, if the issues actually related to the technical matters and ethical standards, the engineers must be there to make decision. Proper management decision. This is actually the decision that being made by the managers. What are the decision involved? It involves factors which relating to the well-being of the organization. Cost, project scheduling, marketing, employees' morale and welfare. These are the decisions that should be made by the managers. The decision does not force engineers to make unacceptable compromises with their own technical or ethical standards. All decision which is not forcing the engineers to compromise, unacceptable compromises on technical and ethical standards. Those are the decisions should be made by the managers. That is a proper management decision. Clear? So the engineers, proper engineering decision involve two areas, technical related matters and ethical standards. Proper management decision involve everything else except these two, or except when there is unacceptable compromises on technical and ethical standards. Clear? This is actually important because in finals, it's always have this question about PMD and PED. Okay, make sure that you study further on this part. Organizational disobedience. What is organizational disobedience? It is a protest of or refusal to follow an organizational policy or action. When you disobey a certain policy or certain action of the organization. In the military, can you do that? No, right? You will be discharged from your service. You will be taken to court-martial, right? There is no such thing as organizational disobedience. You must obey. If not, you leave the service. In the civil service or in private company, it's a bit loose. If you disobey, if you have disobedience, the company cannot immediately terminate you. It has to go through a certain process before they can terminate you. If they terminate you, still you can go to the government, to the Industrial Relation Department under Kementerian Sumber Manusia, Ministry of Human Resource, to file your complaints. And still you can go to court. Okay. What are the types of organizational disobedience? The first one, disobedience by contrary action. The boss asks you to do A, you go and do B. You show your displeasure by doing something which is contrary to the instructions. That is a disobedience by contrary action. Engaging in activities contrary to the interests of the company as perceived by management. The second type of disobedience is disobedience by non-participation. You refuse to carry out an assignment because of moral or professional objections. You decided not to do it. For example, you are a doctor and you believe that abortion is immoral, and you work in hospital, and this hospital actually carries out abortion, and they ask you to perform an abortion. So you say, no, I'm not going to participate in this. I'm not going to carry out this. So that is the disobedience by non-participation. 3, disobedience by protest. You protest against a certain policy or action of the organization. You actively and openly protest a policy or action of an organization. You picket outside of the office. Say that, no. Demonstration, you do demonstration. Those are the disobedience by protest. So these are the 3 types of disobedience. Clear on the disobedience.
Okay, sir.
Okay. In military, there is no such thing as disobedience. Betul. There is no window for disobedience. You will be severely punished for that, right?
Yes, sir.
So what I'm teaching, what I'm giving you is something which is sometimes is not relevant in military service. So you have to if you are cadet, then you have to think a bit different because disobedience, for example, there is uh, uh, no opportunity for you to do that. But in the organization, in the private sector, there are people who will do that, and people get away with it. For example, disobedience by non-participation. There is even actually in US, there is a law to say that a policy to say that an employee should not be forced to do something which is against his personal belief. So now we go into the ethical risk in corporation. Risk, basically that you have ethical risk can be put into three categories. The first one is the severe risk. Severe risk is that putting own interest ahead of the organization. When you have your own interests ahead of the organization, there is a severe ethical risk in the organization. These are the types of severe risk. Lying to employees, abusive behavior, those are severe risk, severe ethical risk. Type of high risk is stealing or internet abuse, misreporting hours work. For example, you work 6 hours, but you report 8 hours that you work. Discrimination and harassment. To me, discrimination and harassment should be severe risk instead of high risk. For example, especially the sexual harassment. Those actually can get you fired. Improper hiring practices. You hire based on cronyism, for example. So those are the high ethical risk. Guarded ethical risk. Examples are, for example, environmental violations, misuse of confidential government organizational information, including competitors' inside information, alteration of documents or financial records. So these are the types of ethical risk. Any question on this? No. Any question? Jega? Jaya?
No, sir.
No, because Jega, I have another student, Jega in year 1 mechanical. No question, okay.
Tak ada,
Who
sir.
else?
No questions.
Any question? If not, I'm going to go into the next topic. So I stop this recording and record a new one. Right?